Hey Cory, so here at .conf,
Yeah, man. Well,
actually one of my most fun conferences of the year. We're talking about it off camera. I get to do like 20 plus of these a year.
yeah.
But there's a genuine sort of energy at .conf that I don't see at other conferences. You kind of embody that for me for Splunk. So tell everybody a little bit about what you do and kind of speak to that community a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So my role at Splunk is probably the most fun in the entire company. And at a fun company, that's a big thing.
Yeah, you get to have some fun.
So my job is to sit right between our product executive leadership team and our customers and be an interface between those two big parties to make sure that we're clearly communicating our technical strategy and innovation narratives and what we're bringing to market on the biggest stages. Like I spend a lot of time on, communicating at Cisco events and Splunk events and industry events, publishing quite a bit on social and other outlets. And so I spend a lot of time communicating out what we're doing. And then I spend a lot of time communicating back to our product leaders what I'm hearing from the customer executives that I spend time
And
with.
that's the bit that I see you're a prodigious content creator, and people see that public side, in fact, the sort of public face of you. What they don't realize is you've got a day job, which is being that field CTO for Splunk. What are you hearing from customers? We were talking about it a little bit off camera. There's a real sort of an inflection point, agentic, AI ops. We're seeing good stuff with what you guys are doing with AI Canvas.
For sure.
What are you hearing? Because I think what I see is that vendors are talking about steps 8, 9, and 10 of a person's journey. A lot of customers are on steps 2 and 3 of their journey. So what are you hearing about that dissonance?
I'm hearing, AI is what everybody wants to talk about for the, proclaimed benefits that it's going to cause for everyone. But I think that I'm sensing from a lot of customers that they want to have a conversation about how do I get there meaningfully and how do I build a data strategy that actually allows me to unlock this AI wave, but in a meaningful way for operations. And we were talking previously about some of the research that came out of MIT's recent sort of viral catching study.
May or may not have seen that online. I don't know why.
Unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I found interesting about that conversation, though, is that it really centered on this concept that the most productive uses in terms of producing ROI for AI for projects within organizations has really been in those back office IT and security and engineering kind of things, less on the sales and marketing. And I think what I sense in the market is that we sit at a really interesting sort of confluence of we're a platform who for many years has been the just send all the data to Splunk. And customers have used that data to affect outcomes on their digital transformation journeys to make sure they can answer the question, if I deploy something, is it secure and is it up and running? And as we bring on these new AI and agentic tools, that digital landscape gets even more complex, and that we're sensing that there's this like non-human scale problem that's starting to emerge, that organizations are looking to companies like Splunk and Cisco to say, are there tools you can help me bring on that are going to make my teams more productive, and that you're going to allow me to use this data I've been collecting for a number of years to actually become a competitive advantage? And that's a big sort of task, but I can tell you we've actually doubled down on some investments in engineering resources here at Splunk to try to make that true. You probably heard the Cisco Data Fabric announcement.
Yeah, I was really ask you about that.
It's a framework under the covers. We can dig into it. But we're also sensing that while organizations are running after this ability to, hey, the CEO is hearing that AI is this initiative that if I do it right, I can replace X number of staff, I can disrupt the market. And when that happens, people go out and they start deploying, but oftentimes they're doing it with such haste right now that they're not actually thinking about the traditional concepts of, is it well instrumented? Do I have visibility into it to where I can answer not only is it secure and up and running, but is it performing as it should? Is it optimally deployed? Is it protected in ways that are important? So we're sensing those two as like big sort of the trends that organizations want help with this data problem to help create intelligent data strategies that allow them to make it a competitive advantage. And then they want us to help them not only use AI to advance the outcomes they already trust us for, but actually go apply some of the things that we do well to these modern AI and agentic enterprises.
Well, you talked about AI Data Fabric, and I always enjoy our conversations because you've got a way to position what's complex technology and sort of multi-dimensional announcements and position those in a way that makes sense. How would you quickly describe the AI Data Fabric? G2 was talking about it on the keynote yesterday. How would you break it down and kind of make it easy for people to understand and comprehend?
I would say it this way. The Cisco Data Fabric is a framework, and a framework meaning it's a collection of tools and best practices and integrations that are necessary to help organizations achieve the objective, which is help me create a data strategy that becomes a competitive advantage. If I go a layer deeper, what it means is it honors this concept that I think has been hard to address for many years, which is not all data is created equal. And not all data belongs in every platform. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't seek to have as much visibility across disparate data sets and types as possible. And so one of the things that the Data Fabric does a really nice job of is it gives you the tools to think about the sources of data that are interesting to your organization for whatever outcome you're trying to drive. If it's IT operations, it's network operations, it's security operations, we give you some now really robust tools to actually make intelligent decisions before the data actually traverses the network or before it traverses into Splunk to say, is a platform like Splunk the right place for this data, or is it the right place for some of it?
Yeah.
And it honors the concept that there are other platforms out there that are really good at doing things that Splunk doesn't do. So things like an Amazon S3 bucket is really good at storing large volumes of data very inexpensively. And so what we now allow you to do is to use technologies like that and Snowflake and Azure and others to say, maybe this data doesn't belong in Splunk, but I don't want it to be a silo. I still want to be able to have visibility. And so the other part of that framework that says, not only give me the ability to put the right data and you use some intelligence to move and surface data the right way, but then land this concept called federation. And federation is just this really like basic idea that says, if I have users who are trying to search for something and Splunk is the search tool that they use, just because the data is not in a Splunk index, like in a traditional sense, doesn't mean they shouldn't have access to it. Yeah. And so federation allows them to not only look across multiple Splunk instances, which happens in some organizations where you have security teams in one and IT in other, but it also allows them to go out and look at external data sources for even more context, right? So you might look at Snowflake, data that's in Snowflake that's business transactional, because it actually helps you tell the story better of...
You can stitch together operations on that line a bit.
And how it's affecting the business in meaningful ways. And so I think that federation concept as another pillar of that data fabric, framework is really important, because there's been tools for a number of years that could route data to different places, it could enrich and strip, but it misses the point of that federation being,
pull it together.
We aren't good at silos. We don't need to be good at silos. Like, let's bring visibility. And then the third part of it is really just this idea that if we build data management pipelines well and we federate distinct data sources, then we actually give the tools that we want to build and that are AI and agentic tools access to a richer set of data to do better at what we're designing them to do. And so we've built things like the Splunk MCP server. So if you have, users that are most users like productivity folks default to like ChatGPT, right? They live in ChatGPT, they ask questions of it. Well, now because of the MCP server, you can actually go in and connect a Splunk environment to your ChatGPT environment, and you can actually ask questions that will kick off that LLM. If you say, hey, tell me a little bit about this Splunk incident that I'm seeing from security, it can actually go in and talk and call, not just like, it doesn't write its own queries, it can actually tell Splunk, I'm looking for this, and the Splunk AI assistants and agents can actually go in and start to run queries and start to look through data, use those federated analytics, and then surface those insights back into the browser that they were in, if it was Claude or ChatGPT or whatever. And so it's this concept of like giving this AI connectivity to the way that people work is really the kind of the three pillars of that AI or that Cisco Data Fabric. And there's a bunch of other kind of cool things we're doing on the AI side too, but that's like a big picture.
So I could listen to you talk about this stuff for hours. I genuinely could, and we'd end up having a 4-hour podcast. But I've got to start to wrap this up. Apparently there's a cutoff point and people start to drop. It wouldn't happen with you on a video.
Oh, yeah.
So if you had to break it down into with a bunch of announcements.
Yeah, a bunch of announcements, yeah.
If you had to break it down into 3 short sort of highlights and takeaways, what would they be?
Yeah, it really centers on the Cisco Data Fabric is an unlocker of value for Splunk customers and for customers that are using lots of other technologies in a more meaningful way than I've seen any other vendor be able to put together, from a giving intelligent data management capabilities to federating disparate data sources and truly building that AI data fuel station, right? It's the fuel for data. So
I love
that's
fuel station.
Number two is, I would say that, the SOC of the future, we believe, is an agentic SOC. And a lot of the announcements we've had this
100%.
week are really about how do we manifest assistance, detection capabilities, agents that are designed to make the SOC analyst more effective at going through their threat detection, investigation, and response cycles. And then the third, I would say, is this idea of AI-powered observability and observability for AI. So we really focused in our observability stories around, again, how are we using modern AI capabilities to advance the outcomes that our observability strategy, folks need, that you have to be able to answer, is the thing performing as it should? And how do we move from like reactive remediation of an issue for a business service to proactive prevention using these modern tools? And then as organizations start to adopt and apply AI to the business, we have to make sure that we can answer, are they secure and up and running?
Well, as always, sir, you flawlessly present the Splunk value proposition. You've been watching us here. Click and subscribe and check out other content, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much for watching.